George-Etienne Cartier was born in Saint-Antoine-sur-Richelieu in Monterey County, Lower Canada, in 1819. He is most unusual in that he has a English spelling to an otherwise French name, being named in honor of the British King, George III, at the time of his birth. He also belonged to a very prominent family of French Canadians in Lower Canada, with roots going back to the early 17th century in Quebec City and Montreal areas. There's also a myth which is commonly put as fact, yet it is erroneous, in which Cartier himself mistakenly believed that he was in fact descended from the famous French explorer of the early 16th century, Jacques Cartier, who discovered the St. Lawrence River and Gulf of St. Lawrence areas. However, these men share only the same name and are not related. As for George-Etienne Cartier himself, he became a lawyer in 1834 and a supporter of Louis-Joseph Papineau. Cartier even fought in rebellions of 1837 in Lower Canada at the Battle of Saint Denis, where the Patriots won an unexpected victory against British regulars. However, after the failure of the rebellions of 1837, Cartier fled to the U.S. in either late 1837 or very early 1838. He then returned to Montreal in late 1838 and was legally allowed to do so by the government in 1839. It is rather ironic, given their later deep personal friendship with each other, that the rebellions of 1837, Cartier was on the rebel side in Lower Canada, whereas John A. Macdonald fought on the government side in the rebellions of Upper Canada that same year. After responsible government was established in Lower Canada in 1840, George-Etienne Cartier devoted himself to being a lawyer and a businessman, and making Montreal the richest city in all of British North America, and the fourth richest in the world at the time. As a lawyer, Cartier was a lifelong supporter of railways, and he later nationalized the Intercolonial Railway of Upper Canada and Lower Canada. It was later expanded in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia after Confederation. He was also the main lawyer for the Grand Trunk Railway in Upper and Lower Canada, and he supported the vision of a pan-Canadian transcontinental railway from coast to coast as well, although he never lived long enough to see it even begun. In addition to that, Cartier was the main lawyer for the Hudson Bay Company in Lower Canada, as well as the lawyer for the Bank of Montreal, which his family had helped found in part in 1817. Later, he became the main lawyer for the Canadian Telegraphic Company, which eventually moved to Bell Telegraph to become Bell Telephone Company, although that was mostly after his death. However, in spite of his very successful legal practice, Cartier gave up the practice of law when he was elected to the Lower Canadian Legislature in 1848. He soon became a cabinet minister in 1857 and then Premier of Lower Canada from 1859 to 1862. Like so many people in the Legislative Assembly, he was frustrated by the fact that Upper and Lower Canada had the exact same number of representatives in the Legislative Assembly, which had led to 6 failed governments in 6 years. So Cartier, MacDonald, and their former arch-enemy, a self-described 6'4" tall one named George Brown, joined forces in the legislature to find a way to break the deadlock, which is what eventually led to Confederation. So it is for this reason that some people consider Cartier to be the true father of Confederation, although people usually reserve that title for John A. Macdonald. But it is absurd to say that one man had more to do with Confederation than the other one, as they seem to have regarded themselves as equals, both in personal and in political matters. As for Confederation itself, Cartier attended the Charlottetown, Quebec, and London conferences. He fought hard for his people, the French Canadians of Lower Canada, so that many of their different linguistic and legalistic rights, as well as their religious ones, were protected by the new federal government. Although he helped draft some of the 22 different resolutions for the 72 resolutions, Cartier clearly fought very hard for Confederation and won over 75% of the population over, despite the campaign to stop Confederation from happening after the Charlottetown and Quebec conferences in 1864. He was also the main proponent for Confederation in Lower Canada. As a result, he was named by Queen Victoria for his work in 1867 at the London Conference. After Confederation, Cartier was a member of Parliament and also the Federal Minister of Militia and Defence, all while he maintained his seat in the Lower Canadian Legislature until 1872, when he was defeated in both elections after nearly 30 years representing the riding of East Montreal. However, in 1869, as a rebellion started in Manitoba, Cartier negotiated and fought hard for the passage of the Manitoba Act in Parliament in 1871. He temporarily upset MacDonald when he insisted on amnesty for Louis Riel after the Red River Rebellion ended peacefully in 1870. With the completion of the Red River expedition, the reason for George-Etienne Cartier insisting on this amnesty for Riel is rather interesting, but in short, it basically comes down to the fact that Cartier was in fact Riel's fifth cousin twice removed, due to the family's deep roots in French Canadian society in Lower Canada. Cartier also travelled to London, England, and negotiated for Canada to buy the Hudson Bay Company's vast lands, which eventually became the province of Manitoba and the Northwest Territories in 1870. He then made the arduous trek across the continent to British Columbia to convince them to join Confederation in 1871, with the promise to build a railway within 10 years, starting in 2 years. He then had the Canadian government nationalize the Canadian Pacific Railway, and as a result of his western trip. After this, Cartier must have been totally physically and mentally exhausted, as he was a very hyperactive man with inexhaustible reserves of energy. This began to fail him in the winter of 1872 to 73. He went to London to consult a specialist medical doctor. When he was there, he died of either kidney disease or kidney failure, or perhaps both, as he died of Bright's disease, a kind of kidney ailment in the 19th century that could basically cover any number of kidney-related ailments. Today, whatever kind of kidney disease he had, Cartier, as a result, died in London, England in 1873 at the age of 58 years old. Jean-Charles Chapais. Jean-Charles Chapais was born in the town of Rivière-Oulet, Camarasa County in Bassin-Larocque region of the Gaspé Peninsula in Lower Canada near the New Brunswick border in 1811. His early life was defined by his father, who was a farmer and a seigneur, as well as a successful businessman mentioned. Ironically, Chapais fought for the abolition of the seigneur land system in Canada in the 1840s. He succeeded in making important critical reforms to the landholding system, but as for the seigneurial system itself, it remained in place until it was completely abolished in the early 20th century. Some families in Quebec technically still have seigneurial titles over land holdings in large parts of the province. Chapais became the first mayor of Saint-Denis-de-la-Barrentrain in 1845, having lived there since 1833. In 1851, he was elected to the Legislative Assembly of Lower Canada and became a staunch supporter of Dr. Etienne Pascal Taché and also of George-Etienne Cartier. During his time in the legislature, Chapais became a passionate supporter of both public health and land reforms, railways, canals, agricultural reforms, and financial reforms, too. In terms of confederation, Chapais attended the Quebec Conference, where he argued that provincial government should be given more power than the federal government had. His ideas were brushed aside. After Confederation, Chapais continued to serve in the Lower Canadian legislature in 1867 to 1871. He also became the first Minister of Agriculture. He became a lifelong supporter of the Transcontinental Pan-Canadian Railroad, yet never quite lived to see it finish, as he died 6 months too early. He also became Receiver General and became the Dominion of Canada's first ever population census conductor in 1867, 1871, 1876, and 1881. He was appointed to the Senate in 1868, which he did until his death in 1885. He resigned as a member of Parliament in 1873, ostensibly in order to surrender retirement to his family. He may also have had some connection to the Pacific scandal, although this is not known for certain. It was during his time at the Senate that he became involved in a bitter feud with John A. Macdonald that lasted until his death. Jean-Charles Chapais died in Ottawa in 1885 at the age of 73. Louis Ligonneville. Louis Ligonneville was born in Quebec in 1826 and became a lawyer in 1850. In terms of politics, Ligonneville was first elected as an alderman or common councillor in Quebec City in 1856. He then became mayor of Quebec City from 1856 to 1861. He was also elected to the Legislative Assembly of Lower Canada in 1857 and continued to serve in the legislature and as the mayor of Quebec City until he resigned from that position later in 1861. The Legislative Assembly of Lower Canada, Ligonneville was the Solicitor General from 1864 to 1866, and Postmaster General of Upper Lower Canada from 1866 to 1867. He also attended the Charlottetown, Quebec, and then conferences and was a passionate supporter of Confederation. He was knighted by Queen Victoria in 1867 for Confederation in terms of that. After Confederation, Ligonier became Secretary of State for Canada from 1867 to 1869, put him in charge of foreign affairs. He then became Minister of Indian Affairs in 1868 and 1869, then Minister of Public Works in 1869 to 1873. Then somehow, it is unclear exactly how, Ligonier became personally involved in the Pacific scandal and thus lost the 1874 election. After the Pacific scandal broke, he personally left politics and went back to being a journalist and newspaper editor until he was re-elected as a member of parliament in a by-election in 1876. In 1878, Ligonier was appointed Minister of Public Works, which he held until 1887. In 1885, Ligonier personally lobbied for the hanging of Louis Riel, although he almost resigned over the resulting anger in Lower Canada. He decided that his resignation would only make things worse. He was certainly the only French Canadian to demand that Riel be hanged, as no other French Canadian parliamentarians supported John A. Macdonald's order. Ligonier also survived the resulting backlash in the 1887 election. Ligonier had earlier taken advantage of Macdonald's alcoholism in 1883 to try to push through what became the residential schools policy, but that did not get implemented until 1889, and he was the man behind this. Although by that time, Macdonald was an old, exhausted, and no longer hearable, yet not consistently drunk man. In short, he bears little indirect responsibility in what would eventually become the Indian residential school system. In other words, he is almost entirely Ligonier's fault, and it was his successors who turned the residential schools over to the Roman Catholic and Anglican churches, although some went to different Protestant denominations as well. After the sudden death in office of John A. Macdonald in 1891, Ligonier's political career came crashing down around him. In 1891, Prime Minister John Abbott decided to make Ligonier the Commissioner or Lieutenant Governor of Quebec. But after it was revealed that he had been embroiled in a series of multiple financial scandals because of his previous position as Minister of Public Works, Abbott didn't give him the position. After that, Ligonier continued to sit in Parliament until his resignation in 1896, just before the Conservative Party under Dr. Charles Tupper lost the 1896 election to the Liberal Party under Wilfrid Laurier. After resigning from Parliament, Ligonier continued to work as a journalist and newspaper editor, as well as a lawyer, which is something he'd always done on and off for his life. Hector-Louis Ligonier died in Quebec City in 1906, aged 79 years old.